ladies and gentlemen, by thanking God. I thank God because we, of course, yesterday were on lockdown as we expected Tropical Cyclone 9, which I gather has now been named Isaias. I trust I pronounced that correctly. And yesterday, of course, the island and the country went into lockdown as a consequence of the threat. I'm delighted that God has yet again decided to spare us any damage. I have had a full report from Mr. Brian Dyer, the Director of the Nevis Disaster Management. I've also had a full report from the Deputy Premier, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, who is the Minister charged with responsibility for disaster management, and they have given the all clear, indicating that all is well on the island of Nevis. I gather that the only thing that we suffered here was there was a downed tree on the island main road near the Noah's Courtesy Garage. That was cleared away. There were no major damages reported except for some beach erosion, and we hope that that will be corrected quickly. And so I hope that you'll join me in thanking Jehovah God yet again for his abundant mercy. I want to point out that this weekend we are going to have a very important commemoration, and that is the 50th anniversary of the Christina disaster. The Christina, as we know, was the inter-island ferry that transported persons between St. Kitts and Nevis. It was the only ferry at the time. It was government-owned, and on that fateful day of August 1st, 1970, it left Bastille on its final trip to Charlestown, badly overcrowded. We are told that it should have had 150 persons on board. It had well over 300. The consequence was that in calm seas on that day, just off what is referred to as Nag's Head, it sank. And in sinking, over 230 persons perished. Many, their bodies have never been found. Many were buried, were trapped inside the vessel, and were buried at sea. Still others are in a mass grave at the Bath Cemetery. Still others, we are told, are in a mass grave at the Springfield Cemetery in St. Kitts. And that has been the legacy. We at the Nevis Island, at government, the Nevis Island administration, have seen it fit to mark the 50th anniversary in a very significant way. We will have tomorrow, God's willing, Friday at 10 a.m., a special sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly. The sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly is designed to give those who will speak an opportunity to pay their respects and also to commemorate in a formal and dignified way this tragedy. This tragedy we know has been seen as a Nevis tragedy all these years. We are saying it is time now that the nation recognizes it as a national tragedy. That yes, the majority of persons who died were from Nevis, but many from St. Kitts also perished on that fateful day. We have persons who have also survived, and we pay homage to them and, of course, to their memory of loved ones lost. And so tomorrow, Friday, we hope to have a special sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly. This sitting will be a sitting with a difference. To mark the somber occasion and the significant milestone of 50 years since its tragedy, we have invited all of our former prime ministers and our current Prime Minister to speak. And this will be the first time that they will be addressing the Nevis Island Assembly. In addition, we have invited all of our former premiers and the current premier also to speak. Of course, we have lost Sir Simeon, and so he cannot speak. Interestingly, however, is that one of the speakers who we expect, Sir Kennedy Simmons, our only living national hero, was the only medical officer on Nevis at the time of this tragedy. So he brings a unique perspective to this tragedy that we hope he might be able to share with us tomorrow. And so we are asking all to tune in. We recognize that we will not be able to accommodate large numbers of people, but certainly we are asking you to tune in to NTV, to Vaughan Radio, where we hope to stream the proceedings that will happen tomorrow live. And we think that that is a significant event and a significant marker in the life and times of the people of Nevis. And so we invite you to pay attention accordingly. Tonight at 7 p.m., the Nevis Island
And then you, the members
administration
of the press corps, will be
continues
given
a
the
series of town
opportunity
hall
to
meetings
ask
that it
your
has
questions.
started. Dubbed Conversations with the People, we will continue at the Franklin Brown Community Center this evening at 7:30 p.m. 7:30 p.m., forgive me. We will be at the Franklin Brown Community Center. The first such meeting we will continue at the Franklin Brown Community Center. We had a very good turnout there. We want to thank the people of St. Thomas's Parish and Cotton Ground for turning out, and we were able to share pertinent information. Essentially what we're doing is bringing the government to the people. We are taking government on the road. We're bringing government into your communities so that you have an opportunity to ask the questions and to get the clarification that you deserve. This, again, is part and parcel of our effort at good governance. I would only seek to point out for members of the press that there is an election pending. We get a lot of accusations sometimes that we're electioneering. This is part and parcel of our good governance agenda. Going out, taking government into the communities and allowing people to have an opportunity to ask their questions. This weekend is also, of course, what we call Emancipation Weekend. We are aware that traditionally, Culturama now would be climaxing this weekend. Of course, due to COVID-19, we have been unable to have our usual Culturama activities. And whilst Minister Evelyn, our Minister of Culture, has said that Culturama has been postponed, I believe that we all agree that it has been cancelled for this year. And so, what we have decided to do is, of course, we have launched a campaign where we're inviting our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts to come over and spend the weekend in Nevis. Some call it a staycation, whatever you wish. We are saying to them that we know they normally come over for the jamming and the juve and all of that. That is not going to happen. And let me just reiterate. There's no jamming or juve this weekend. That might disappoint many, but that is the reality. We cannot afford that type of behavior during this particular time. However, what we have sought to do is to put on some events. We have sought the cooperation of the police to organize in Charlestown a sort of a mini food fair, if you will, where we hope that we can have booths spaced at 10 or more feet apart all along Charlestown, and that persons will be able to go and buy fruits, vegetables, buy food, buy drink, and we hope that we'll have the poets, because the poets will be performing, and perhaps the string band will be there. So a bit of folklore, but we are not having the bands and the DJs and the jamming. And so we're putting that together just so that people have some place to go and that our vendors can capitalize and make $1 or $2. In addition, we are aware that some of our hotels are offering specials, and we invite, of course, the good people to come over. We're also aware that at Sunshine's, he's having what he refers to as a wine, food, and Carib festival. And that is happening. He has, however, limited numbers, but nevertheless, we invite our people to go out and be a part of that. And all across the island, I assume people will be having get-togethers, family reunions, and the like. And so we welcome our brothers and sisters. We look forward to seeing them. And I trust and hope that I can greet as many people from St. Kitts as possible. Many Kittitians don't know Nevis. In fact, as I go over, some of them tell me they have never been to Nevis. You may find it hard to believe. But some of them say they've never been to Nevis. Well, I hope they can hear me. I'm inviting them personally to come and see their sister island this weekend. Come over, get on one of those ATV tours, get on a horseback riding, get on one of those little, what do they call over at Clifton's estate now, funky monkey tours, I think they call it. Go and hike the rainforest, go and hike the mountain, do something, but learn about your sister island. This is your country as well, and we invite our brothers and sisters to come over and be a part of that. So the Emancipation Weekend Culturama is cancelled, but we want to have some activity such as the food fair, as I said, so that persons can purchase food and purchase fruits and vegetables as we push for more in terms of our own food security. We have a preponderance now of crops, fruits especially, watermelons, mangoes, guineas, avocado, that all are becoming available, and so we ask our people to go out and to take advantage of that. So we look forward then to a good weekend in that regard. Now, we continue to be in the throes of COVID, and I continue to congratulate, of course, our team on the island of Nevis. Yes, we have a national team which has done excellent work. The CMO, Dr. Laws, Abdius Samuel, the entire team has to be commended. But the day-to-day guidance in Nevis has been provided by a COVID-19 team on Nevis, headed by Dr. Judy Nisbet. I have said so, and I will continue to say so, that she has done a Herculean task. Her effort has been phenomenal. She briefs me almost now on a daily basis, and she and the team, Brian Dyer and others, Shalisa Martin, our PS in Health, they have really done a phenomenal job, and I want us all to recognize them for the work that they would have done when we were in the grip, in the teeth of this pandemic. They were on the front line. And I want to commend them because through their efforts, Nevis has not had a case of COVID-19 since the 7th of April. And the island of Nevis had 4 cases. We have not yet had another case, and have not had one since the 7th of April. That means that we can truly say that we have done better than virtually everyone else in the region. However, I hasten to say that we expect that we will get more cases. I want to make that clear. So while we like the tag of being COVID-free, and Nevis is certainly a healthy place to be, I believe that the nature of COVID being what it is, we must brace ourselves for the possibility. And the narrative that must come from leadership has to be that we anticipate that other cases may come. And so we have not relented in terms of our preparation for any new cases. And we've continued to beef up in terms of our supplies, in terms of our equipment. And we would want to thank the federal government for its partnership. We would want to thank friendly governments such as the Republic of China and Taiwan for their partnership, which has helped to put us in a state of readiness. And so let us continue, therefore, to be vigilant, that we continue to adhere to the necessary protocols. And in case those of you might be watching and say, why am I not wearing a mask? Because we are practicing more than the social distancing here. I could barely see without my glasses the members of the press. They're that far away from me. So that is the reason, and it is difficult, of course, to do an entire press conference behind a mask. But just so you know that we are practicing the necessary protocols, and we encourage the members of the public to continue to adhere to those protocols. As the government, however, looks, because as I have said, COVID presented a health crisis. But the health crisis has also now precipitated an economic crisis. And we must respond to both. And as we try to respond to that economic crisis, the Nevis Island administration, through its cabinet, met with our technical team, and they have come up with one of the sectors that we feel can be stimulated is construction. And we have proposed a significant package for construction. And I announced it the other night, but I would just like to take half a minute to indicate again that this construction stimulus package, which applies to construction activity that is commenced between now and December 31st. So that is an important caveat. Don't tell me that you want to build in 2021 or 2022, because by then the stimulus will be over. The stimulus is designed as a short-term shot in the arm to get people who might have been wavering or thinking about construction to do it now. We are hopeful, of course, that our banks will come on board and take advantage and reach out to customers about doing construction at this point in time. First-time homeowners continue that program of first-time homeowners. They will continue to get all materials duty-free, customs off, and free of customs service charge. They will pay VAT only. Now, that concession hitherto was only available to first-time homeowners, first-time people constructing a home. We have now said that we will extend that now. So if you own a home already and you want to build another one for your sister or your mom, if you own a home already and you want to put on an addition to that home, we're saying now that we will extend the concession to you. So for those who want to renovate, expand, or build a second or third or fourth home, or put up a building for that matter, we are now saying that you too will benefit from customs duty off and customs service charge off, and you will pay VAT only. The only caveat here is that we only are giving that concession on materials above $30,000. So, if you're a first-time homeowner, you pay VAT only on your building materials. If you're now doing a second or third home, or you're doing additions or renovations, then you pay VAT only, but only on materials above $30,000. If you're doing a commercial building and you're spending over 1 million EC dollars, we have exempted you from VAT and customs duties, and you will be asked to pay only 12% customs service charge. If you are doing a building, a commercial building, which is under $1 million, we are exempting you from customs service charge and customs duties, but you will pay VAT. The condition that we've attached to the commercial building is that we are hopeful that contractors there, at least 80% of your workforce should be nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis, because we're trying to stimulate but also trying to get jobs, of course, and protect jobs for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I hope I've made that clear. Let me just go through one more time so that you understand what the stimulus is. First-time homeowners, you pay VAT only on your materials. If you're doing expansion or building a second home or renovations, you're going to pay VAT only on materials over $30,000. If you are constructing a commercial building which is valued at over $1 million, you are VAT exempt and customs duties exempt, and you pay 12% customs service charge. If you're doing a commercial building under $1 million, then you pay VAT only on your materials. And the condition of those last two is that you must have 80% of your workforce should be locals. Bear in mind that during the hurricane season, we have also taken off all customs duties on generators and hurricane shutters so that people can better prepare themselves. Now, the applications should be made at the Ministry of Finance. You should be able to go in and speak to the folks there. They will guide you for those who are interested in taking advantage of these concessions. In addition, whilst we know that some people can get materials out of Miami and elsewhere, we're encouraging you to buy local. And so we're saying go to TDC, go to Hosford's, go to Island Tires, go to Builders Paradise, buy your material locally. You will still benefit from the concessions. And so there is no additional value in you going overseas if you can get it here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so that is what we're seeking to do, and we trust and hope that the construction sector will respond, that the public will respond, and that people will be able to take advantage of this very generous package of concessions going forward. And as I said, let me end where I started, that you must commence your construction by December 31st. The idea is to give a short-term stimulus, to generate a shot in the arm, if you will, for the construction sector. And we know construction can generate quite a bit of commercial activity and quite a few jobs. Let me segue quickly. I want to congratulate. I normally start with that, but on this occasion, I have not started. But nevertheless, I want to congratulate young Kezi, Colin Kezra and Kezi Archibald. He has made the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriot cricket team for 2020 CPL. Starts on the 18th of August in Trinidad and Tobago. Kezran, along with 3 other divisions, have recently returned to Nevis after completing a degree in sports at the G.C. Foster College in Jamaica. I feel especially proud of these 4 youngsters because they were sent off on full scholarship from the Nevis Island Administration to study various disciplines in sport at G.C. Foster. And they've run the course. They now completed it. But of them, Kezi is being recognized today because he has made the CPL team for 2020. And we congratulate him and wish him all the very best. Since I'm in congratulatory mood, let me also congratulate the awardees for the Youth Impact Awards ceremony. That will happen on August 12th, which is International Youth Day. We're encouraging everybody to log on. All of these things are being done virtually. But those youngsters are Militia Clark in Sports Excellence, Brandon Powell, Information Technology, Verna Grant, Education and Lifelong Learning, Ravina Prasad, Youth in Agriculture, Delcia Burke in Volunteerism, and Cecilia Cressy Stanley, Entrepreneurship with Specialty in Culinary Arts. 3 special awards will also be distributed that night, but of course I congratulate all of the youngsters who will be the beneficiaries of the Youth Impact 12 awards ceremony. Let me segue very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, to just give you some additional information. The water sector, water, as we say, is life, and I want to commend Minister Brand and his team, who have really been doing an excellent job in relation to water. We have been going through a bit of drought, but obviously now the rains have come, and for that we are grateful. The Hamilton Filtration Project remains on hold as we try to get the technical expertise in. We have had some problems because those who were supposed to come were reluctant to be quarantined for 14 days. And so we're trying to see what we can do to get them here to get that plant commissioned. Once that is commissioned, we'll have a few extra 100,000 gallons of water into the system. And that is what we have been preparing for. In Harris Village, that's over in Webb's Estate, the first phase of the project involved the installation of approximately 4,500 feet of 4-inch HDPE pipes. Project commenced on March 9th. To date, we've laid 1,830 feet of pipes, and the first phase has already been pressurized. Persons living in this area were able to, in some cases, have their water restored, and others were able to get better water pressure. The intention has always been to supply water from the Stony Hill Reservoir to the upper sections of Harris's Village or Webb's Estate. And that has been the position since 1995. 1995. We are now delivering it, 1995 till now, 15 years later, we're now delivering on that. And so we are happy that we are moving in that direction and that the people of Harris's and Webb's Estate are going to get some relief. Of the estimated total length of approximately 4,000 feet, approximately 3,200 feet, 80% of 4-inch HDE pipes have already been laid. On the Hanley's Road project, 400 feet of 2-inch pipe extension that was completed in Hanley's Road, just above the community center there, to alleviate extremely low water pressure being experienced, and that period of construction was July 13th to 24th. So that's done, and we are happy and hope that the people there have got some relief. I am saddened to report that the Public Works Department has had, because of inclement weather, to revise their final closing date on two projects, the Brown Hill project and the Craddock Road project. We had hoped to have those ended now, the end of July. They have now asked for an additional 2 weeks to the 14th of August. But just so the people of those areas are aware, in Brown Hill, we've completed now all the curbs and drains. We've completed all the retaining walls, the backfilling. We have done 75% of the sidewalks, and we now will finish by the 14th of August. In Craddock Road, 80% completion of all drainage works, 100% completion of excavation of the thoroughfare, 100% completion of all boundary walls, 85% completion of drainage works, and 85% completion of asphalting. Again, we expect that that will be done by the 14th of August. Now let me segue to the Labor Department. I want, ladies and gentlemen, for us to recognize that, as I say, COVID is a health crisis and it is also an economic crisis. Publicly, I've commended, and I want to commend again, the management staff ownership of the Four Seasons Resort. Because when all the other hotels were closing and persons were being laid off, the Four Seasons also closed, but took the decision to pay their workers in full for the months of April and May. And so all the workers at Four Seasons continued to get their pay for April and May, notwithstanding the hotel was closed. The Four Seasons had indicated they would only be able to do that for 2 months. But through some discussions with the government, they were then able to offer 60% of wages to workers for the months of June and July as well. We are here today on the 30th of July, and so July has come to an end. And as promised, the Four Seasons has started the process of layoff of workers. It saddens me, but that is the harsh reality. And so Four Seasons has reported that some 403 resort staff members will be on temporary layoff. 151 resort staff members will remain working according to their business levels and also to protect and maintain the Four Seasons plant. 7 homeowners association staff members will be temporarily laid off. 117 homeowners association staff members will remain working. So of the complement of staff at the Four Seasons, 403, a significant number of resort staff members, have already received or are receiving letters putting them on layoff. And layoff is a good, maybe nice sounding terminology. Simply means that people will have no income. People will be out of work. That is the harsh reality of the economic crisis that we are facing and will continue to face. So, 7 homeowners association staff members and 403 resort members. That's 410 divisions, petitions, families that will be affected. 151 resort staff members will continue to work, and 117 homeowners association staff members will continue to work. My math suggests that 268 workers will continue, but some 410 will be laid off temporarily. The only way Four Seasons can be open ultimately is for the borders to reopen. And that is an issue that we are grappling with. We have had some good meetings at the NIA level. We've also had some good meetings at the federal level. We've had meetings with the coordinating teams on St. Kitts, all looking at the question of when could be an opportune time for the borders to reopen. No date has yet been fixed in stone, but we are working, and as part of that effort, we are now seeing some training that has started for hotel workers, people who are on the front line in terms of training to equip them for how we are going to look and feel and how hospitality is going to be dealt with post-COVID. The sensitization and training for all tourism employees, that started on Monday. This is this week, Monday. And we have mandated that all tourism workers in Nevis be trained. We began on Monday on the 27th of July. The training is part of the preparation for the reopening of borders when that comes. No date has yet been set, but we have started the work. All tourism workers directly or indirectly employed must be adequately prepared, especially since there are high instances of COVID-19 in all of our primary source markets. The new normal requires a paradigm shift, new customer service requirements, etc. We anticipate that over the course of the next 2 weeks, over 1,000 persons will be engaged in the training exercise on the island of Nevis. And just so you know, this will include taxi drivers, it will include customs officers, immigration officers, NASPA workers, and of course hotel workers will be trained as well. Tourism establishments, they will all be responsible for their own in-house training based on the plans which they will have developed. The plans will be guided by the relevant COVID-19 protocols, and the Ministries of Health and Tourism will collaborate to monitor and guide the in-house training. The COVID-19 task force will inspect properties. Those that meet the requirements will be issued a St. Kitts and Nevis Travel Assured seal, which will be a physical document as well as an electronic seal, which is placed on the website and social media platforms of compliant tourism establishments. So I want to make that clear. That is not that we're going to set a date and everybody's going to open. That what we're saying is that persons must prepare themselves for reopening. And the COVID task force is going to be monitoring the various properties, inspecting. And those that are compliant will be allowed to open. Those that are not compliant will work with them to ensure that they become compliant. And that is what we are seeking to do, because we understand that we have to reopen at some point in order to allow the country to breathe, in order to allow these 410 people at Four Seasons and the near 500 at Marriott, and those at Park Hyatt, they must get back to work. The taxi drivers must get back to work. The tour operators must get back to work. The restaurants must get back to work. And so we are seeking to achieve this, but as I've said, to strike that delicate balance between safety and health, which is paramount, and of course the economy. And that is a balance we must strike so that we don't have the one overpowered by the other. So we have to now find a way, and that is what the technical teams are advising on in an effort to find that happy medium, that sweet spot. We had the Mango Festival in virtual format. I myself chuckled when they told me that they were doing the Mango Festival virtually, because I have never eaten a mango online. Never done it virtually. So it's an interesting thing that they did. But it was a resounding success from the 3rd to the 5th of July. The entire weekend, including an informational video. This was done by Ministry of Agriculture featuring Banky. You all know Banky, Mr. Rodney King. I didn't realize Banky's name was Rodney King. I know he's Mr. King. I didn't realize it was Rodney. But Mr. King, Banky, as well as a virtual cook-off competition that was hosted at Cleveland Gardens. And our honorary division, somebody we're very proud to say is an honorary division, Judy Jew, who's a famous chef. She made a delicious mango tiramisu. So she was online teaching those of us like myself who like to cook how to do tiramisu from mango. The NTA is grateful for a seamless experience, looks forward to planning the 2021 Mango Festival, and hopefully Mango 2021 we could actually be there, not just virtual. There were 2 competitors in the Nevis Mango Festival cook-off chef competition. Wentworth Smitten was assisted by his mom, Julie Smitten, and they emerged the winners. And the chef and culinary artist, Erica Stapleton, was assisted by Joel Phillip, and they placed second. So we thank both Wentworth and his mom, and Erica and Joel, who participated in the cook-off. I think they had good fun. And so Smitten, he won a trophy and a staycation at Nisbet Plantation Beach Club when they reopened. The cook-off, we're told, was viewed by over 13,000 persons online. We'd want to congratulate our CEO of Tourism, Jadine Yard, and the NTA and the entire team for an excellent effort in pulling off this virtual Mango Festival. Let me just go quickly to something that I know is near and dear that people have been asking about, and that is the reopening of the early childhood centers. The information that I've been provided says that the early childhood centers, that consultations have occurred, a series of consultations and training sessions with supervisors, proprietors, and staff over the past few weeks. Proprietors of early childhood centers, and let me say this slowly so that the persons can hear. Proprietors, owners of early childhood centers can reopen following completion of an application form and approval of their center from the Compliance Task Force. The Compliance Task Force will utilize a checklist which was jointly created by representatives of the COVID-19 Task Force, the Ministry of Education, and the Probation and Child Welfare Board. Proprietors or owners of early childhood centers can reopen their centers on a rolling basis and can do so at any time. They do not have to have a specific date. So, if you are listening to me and you're the owner of an early childhood center, what you must do is go and fill out the necessary form. The COVID task force will come and inspect, and once they're satisfied, you can open tomorrow. There's no date set for you to open. You open when your establishment is ready. So we are expecting that early childhood centers will take advantage of that and start the reopening process. That is important because we can't talk about reopening the economy if parents with young children are then being asked to go out to work, because where are they going to leave their children? I'm very proud of this government that I lead because we have always been guided by the mantra that our people matter most. And what we have done in recognition of the fact that our early childhood centers have been closed and that our parents must, in order to go out and work, have adequate daycare, we have in fact allowed, over the last several months, our civil servants, public workers, who have young children to stay at home with their children. And that has been controversial in some quarters. We have done it on a case-by-case basis, but it is part of the government demonstrating that it understands and that it cares. That our mothers, our fathers, whoever might be the primary caregiver, that some of them have taken advantage of the opportunity to be at home. Because I don't know about you, but I don't think that most of us can focus adequately at work if we have young children at home unattended. And so in the light of the daycare centers being closed and the early childhood centers being closed, we offered that concession to our workers and many have taken advantage of it, and I'm quite proud that we're able to do so. Just to advise that we have talked a lot about the TVET and the TVET project. It has now started in earnest at the Gingerland Secondary School, and there'll be a groundbreaking on August 6th. We will hear some more about that, no doubt, as we move on. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just quickly go to the Ministry of Health, which has been on the front line during this COVID-19 pandemic. And the Ministry of Health has continued to work closely with the federal counterparts, with PAHO, with the Taiwanese government. We have recently benefited from an additional 2 ventilators, 2 defibrillators, a supply of PPEs, which I think is personal protection equipment. We also have a PCR testing machine that has come. We are trying to get that commissioned so that we can do testing at the Alexandra Hospital. We have 2 infrared camera systems. They will be placed at Alexandra Hospital and the Van Samer International Airport. And all the infrared system, as I understand it, is as you walk into the room, it scans and gets your temperature without actually having to take your temperature, whether with a thermometer or with one of the temperature gauges. So we're trying to move with the times and are grateful that this equipment has come. The Ministry of Health is also now facilitating, working with the COVID-19 task force on Nevis, PCR testing to those persons who may require a test for travel purposes. Now I want to make this clear, that some countries are saying if you want to come there, for example Antigua, if you are traveling onwards, Antigua's airport is open, but you want to transit through Antigua, you must have a negative COVID test. So persons leaving Nevis, going to London via Antigua, have to get a COVID test done locally so that they can present that on check-in and present that to the authorities in Antigua. And so we are facilitating that now for you. You're asked to write to the task force, and the email is COVID-19 taskforce@niagov.com. Or you can call 469-1423 or 662-9342 for further information. The test costs $400 EC or $150 US. So if you're traveling and you want a COVID test, we are facilitating you, we are assisting you with that. Please email COVID-19 taskforce@niagov.com or call 469-1423 or 662-9342, and the cost is $400 EC or $150 US. Importantly, ladies and gentlemen, as part of the economic response, the Gender Affairs Department is currently conducting a boot camp for persons who are desirous of starting a new business or expanding the existing business. 14 persons are currently enrolled, and what we're trying to do is create a path to entrepreneurship. Participants are being introduced to topics such as marketing, customer service, information technology, intellectual property, sales and pricing, etc. The idea is to collaborate with the Small Enterprise Development Unit so that individuals can be prepared, develop their business plan, and then through SIDU, they can get financing of up to $100,000 to help. We have said that we are very committed to the development of the small business sector, and we continue to urge individuals to take advantage of these opportunities. We also have the department was also in collaboration, that is the Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs, with the Department of Agriculture and the Ministry of Social Development, as we are using, as we refer to it, as an all-of-society approach and an all-of-government approach in our response. So you see a lot of collaboration between various departments, and they facilitated a backyard gardening seminar on July 15th. The seminar was the launch for a project aimed at encouraging participants to see backyard gardening as a step towards greater food security, especially now, of course, in light of COVID-19. 12 participants, mainly women from the RISE program, were provided with startup kits. These included seeds, seedlings, and a variety of small gardening tools. So again, the government is seeking to stimulate activity. We're trying to give people the means to fish, the opportunity and the training to go out and fish, so that they then can provide for themselves and their families. Education, of course, the MUA scholarship is a very significant scholarship here in Nevis. This MUA offers 2 full paid scholarships per year to the people of Nevis. This year, unfortunately, perhaps due to COVID, we only had 2 applicants. But those 2 applicants have been deemed to satisfy the requirements, and they are Kyla Hanley. She'll be pursuing a degree in biomedical engineering at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, and Tamara Davis will be pursuing a degree in psychology also at the University of West Indies, but this time at the Cavell campus. We would want to wish Kyla and Tamara all the success in the world and congratulate them on being the winners of the MUA scholarship for 2020-2021. Ladies and gentlemen, I will close by just looking very briefly at the uptick for our COVID-19 response thus far. We are in an environment, as I pointed out publicly, where government revenue is down dramatically. To give you an idea, as of June 2020, the NIA revenue was $59.7 million. That fell short of the projected revenue of $73.5 million by some $13.8 million, or 18.82%. Put differently, we're 18.82% less than we anticipated we would have had as of June. The government, therefore, is experiencing its own crisis in terms of its ability to pay its staff and to pay those who work for government and the ongoing commitments that the government has. With revenue down, you can understand that we have been struggling on the island of Nevis. We recognize that everybody is undergoing some hardship. We have, however, responded as aggressively as we can with the very limited resources available to the NIA. And in March of 2020, we announced a far-reaching stimulus package. We have continued to add to that package, to tweak that package, to see how we can do more. And I started out by talking about the massive stimulus that we have just proposed for construction. We, however, from early, focused primarily on food security. It was my stated goal as the Premier of Nevis that the people of Nevis should no longer be dependent on the ships coming from Miami. Or let me put that differently, should no longer be exclusively dependent on the ships coming from Miami. That we had enough arable land and enough technical know-how here on the island that we had to take our food security to a different level. I am very pleased that I have a man such as the Deputy Premier, who is now also the Federal Minister of Agriculture, in charge of agriculture in the person of Alexis Jeffers, because he is passionate and serious about agriculture. And so he jumped at it. The Cabinet fashioned a number of concessions. And we have already seen the results. I think I would have shared some results already about the yields and how yields in most crops have really skyrocketed since this stimulus package. Our farmers and fishers have received unprecedented assistance. That has included free seeds, free seedlings, free fencing wire, free fish pot wire, free fertilizer, free land preparation, and in some cases we provided labor from the agricultural department to go and work on some of these farms at no cost to the farmers. We have also offered free water for 6 months, reduced costs at our abattoir, and most recently we were able to benefit some 100, I believe, and let me see if I have the number here. Yes, 154 livestock farmers benefited from free feed through a process with ECGC in St. Vincent, where we got an entire container of feed from them that we distributed to our farmers for free. We have given concessions on water and electricity. Every church in Nevis has received free hand sanitizer and masks from the government. Every household in Nevis has received reusable masks for free from the government. In fact, the COVID-19 task force and their volunteers went house to house in Nevis handing out free masks, which are reusable. Thus far, we are told that 250 domestic consumers have benefited from 50% electricity rebates from NEVLEC. 1,666 persons have benefited from Social Security, the Social Security relief package that was offered. in Nevis. 1,666 persons in Nevis. That has been valued at $3.52 million. Social Security has asked me to tell you that they're still processing claims and they're asking for your patience. There was a problem because they found that some people overpaid. Some people applied in St. Kitts and they applied again in Nevis. So you had situations where they're now trying to do their double checks and to ensure that the right people get the benefit. So if you have not yet got your follow-up checks, please be patient. If you have applied and not yet got something, please be patient. But thus far, 1,666 persons have benefited at a value of $3.52 million here on the island of Nevis. 50 livestock farmers have benefited from fencing wire. 50 crop farmers and 200 backyard farmers have benefited from our various concessions. 800 homes have benefited from seeds and seedlings. And ladies and gentlemen, I feel particularly proud because when we designed this package, we didn't just say if you are serious or a commercial farmer. We extended it as well to the backyard farmer. So we said for those who wanted to do a little gardening, because you also make a contribution to food security. So we extended the concessions, free seeds, etc., and people have benefited. And so 800 homes across the island have benefited. 120 rolls of fish pot wire have been handed out. 154 livestock farmers, as I said, have got free feed. And a program that I'm very proud of, the Concerned Citizens Movement, spearheaded a program. Of course, I'm the leader of the party. But what we did was we persuaded the cabinet members to contribute to a fund of $13,500 each month. And the months were May, June, and July. 3 months. $13,500. And let me emphasize that this is money from our pockets. This is not coming from the Treasury. Everybody was asked to contribute. And we came up with a fund of $13,500 per month for food vouchers. Our pledge was that no family in Nevis should go hungry during this pandemic. We were able, through that mechanism, to attract interest from others. In fact, just this morning, I received a check for 1,000 EC dollars sent to me all the way from the United States of America from a lady who sent a wonderful note and said that Nevis, she discovered Nevis 42 years ago, and that Nevis rejuvenates her soul. And she thought that making a contribution to this food initiative was the least that she could do to show her commitment and show that she is prepared to give something back. And so I won't call her name, but I want to thank her and thank the numerous others who have stepped up and stepped forward. Would you believe, ladies and gentlemen, that that $13,500 that we started with, we were able from that to provide vouchers of $150 each to 162 families in the month of May. In the month of June, we were able to benefit 300 families. And we are currently now collecting the data for the July allocation, which we hope to go out today or tomorrow. And so far, this initiative has benefited persons to the tune of $69,300 in food vouchers at $150 each. We have used the model of food vouchers because we thought that people should be free to buy what they want. And so once they get the voucher, they go to the supermarket and they shop to the value of $150. I have said and continue to say that you can't use a voucher for cigarettes, you can't use it for alcohol. The idea is that you buy food, and that is a limitation that has been put on it. And so we encourage our people to continue. For those who know of persons in need, those who are vulnerable, we ask you to reach out, and we will, of course, make these food vouchers available. The last tranche will be available this month, either today or tomorrow, I believe. Those vouchers should go out and be delivered so that persons can do their little shopping for the weekend. And I'm thankful to the members of Cabinet, but also to all others who have stepped up and have contributed in such a significant way. Two other announcements. One, that I'm quite pleased that we have signed off on an arrangement with both Digicel and Flow, where we will be doubling the broadband access, internet access for the NIA. and to our schools. And so particularly our two high schools, the Gingerland Secondary and the Charleston Secondary, their broadband access, internet access will be doubled in terms of your speed. And we have come after some long negotiations. I want to thank the Honorable Troy Liebert, who led the effort, and we were able to persuade both Flow and Digicel to offer us rates that we could manage for that upgrade, a significant upgrade to the broadband capability of the NIA, and particularly the broadband capability of our schools. And the last matter I would want to mention before I open the floor for questions is that those of you who would have driven past would recognize that our Pinnis Park, the project we've talked about for a while, has now started. The construction firm is on site, and I believe they're now doing some of the groundwork in terms of fencing the property and getting it ready for construction. They have advised that they will be hiring about 50 or so persons. And so we have encouraged in our last town hall meeting that the youngsters, particularly those in St. Thomas's, since the project is in the parish of St. Thomas's and they could walk to work, that they avail themselves of the opportunity to apply and to be a part of that huge project that we have talked about for so many years, but that is now on the way. I want to end by thanking the government and people of the Republic of China, Taiwan. I want to thank them for their kindness in that particular project and for their continued assistance in the developmental thrust of the island of Nevis and the wider Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I will leave it there, ladies and gentlemen, and take your comments, take your queries. If you have no questions, that's fine. We can end early. If you have questions, then certainly I will take those and try my very best to answer as best as I can. Thank you very much.
Pleasant good morning to all.
Good morning.
I am Bjorn Hanley of BHC Media. Our website is www.bhcmediaskn.com, and you can find us on all the social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, Mr. Premier, I'm sorry the Minister of Agriculture and Environment is not here, because the first question I have is to do with their various portfolios.
Yes.
Now, several weeks ago, the government went into the House and they passed a legislation to say that persons who have livestock which are roaming the road, the government will put a system in place where they shoot the animals. However, I took note that there is nothing in the legislation to reduce the flock of donkeys, monkeys, and to control the wild bush that's growing all around Nevis. So on one hand, you have the donkeys and monkeys which are free to roam, and the government is focusing on animals. Is there a reason for this, Mr. Premier?
Well, I understand you put the question in a particular way. I think that there may be things that are happening that you're unaware of.
Yeah.
Insofar as agriculture is concerned, there is a robust monkey control program and a robust donkey control program which have been ongoing and continue even now. The legislation dealt with the whole issue of stray animals. And if you realize the legislation would have made reference to donkeys and monkeys as well. If you look at the legislation, it does make reference to donkeys and monkeys. But it speaks generally to stray animals. And I don't think we need to make too fine a point of it. All of us have seen flocks of sheep and goat walking even in Charlestown. We have some farmers here in Nevis who at mornings let out the animals and don't look back over their shoulder until evening time. They allow the animals to roam around the street, roam in your yard, eat down your flowers, come in your yard, destroy your crops, whatever the case may be. We're saying that the time has now come that all of us be responsible, and that farmers who are farming animals must be responsible for their animals, just the same way as those who are farming crops, and they have to be able to coexist. One of the things that has pained me, Mr. Hanley, is to drive by the Mondo track, for example, and see the number of sheep and goats that have somehow been able to get inside the Mondo facility and are over there grazing. We have farmers in the area. The government has provided land for them. The government is providing fencing wire. The government is providing free water. The government is providing assistance. So what we are saying to all, be responsible. And you cannot allow your animals simply to walk around and go into people's yards and go into communities and cause havoc. We don't think that that is an unreasonable request. We are particularly concerned that we have some animal farmers who have 200 and 300 heads sometimes of livestock. But they always tell you when they go, you don't have any to sell. So you wonder, well, is this a commercial venture or you're raising pets? Because we need to, if we are going to get to food security, and if the government is going to invest, get genuine partnership from the farmers as well. So this legislation really is designed to say to our livestock farmers, you must seek to control your animals. The days of letting your animals wild to go and interfere, I won't even bother to get into the damage to vehicles and things of that nature. Because all of us know, you come around a corner, there's a flock of sheep or whatever, and bam, you get yourself into an accident, costing you money, sometimes life and limb. So we are saying that we must now be responsible. If Nevis is going to progress, Mr. Hanley, all of us have to play our part. And if the government is going to be partnering with you, we feel that the government should also say to you, be responsible. We want more livestock. We want more livestock farming. We have provided land and other assets to assist in livestock farming. But we also want livestock farmers to be responsible and understand. You can't just let go your animals and let them roam cherry gardens and go on people's porch when the people are at work and things of that nature. That is unfair to that homeowner. You can't just let go, as we're talking about backyard farming. The government cannot be on the one hand encouraging people to farm in their backyard and you let your goat and sheep go in the people's yard to eat down their crops. And so we're trying to prevent the conflict by appealing to our people to coexist. That for us is important and that is critical. We had a situation up to recently where a very important business here on the island complained. What is the complaint? They have a set of cows. And these cows apparently come into their property every day. Now, when we contacted the farmer and said, you can't have your cows going into the people's property like that, creating no ends of problems, the farmer said, tell them fence the property. Imagine that. Tell them fence the property. Not that he should control his cows, but that they should fence their property. And that is what we're trying to get, for our people to be responsible. I talk about it all the time. So I don't want people to say, oh, this is something against livestock farmers. To the contrary, it is something that is designed to say to livestock farmers, we value your contribution, we want you to contribute more, but you must be responsible in terms of your animals. You cannot have them roaming about. Because when that happens, Mr. Hanley, the dogs go with them, they get attacked, they get knocked down. You drive along that road there by the Mondo track, and you see carcasses sometimes on the road because cars hit lambs, they hit sheep, they hit goat. That's a loss to the farmer. So the farmers must be responsible and must be able to take farming seriously and control their animals. And the government is prepared to partner with them as we have done, and will continue to partner with them. The monkey and donkeys are in fact included in that legislation, but separately we have had programs dealing with those which are ongoing.
Okay, Mr. Premier, you made some good points there, but don't you think that the animal situation could have been handled a little bit better? In other words, you mentioned food security, and also you mentioned that the government needs revenue. So instead of shooting the animals, don't you think impounding the animals and charging maybe $100 per animal, that would have been a good way to provide some jobs and to get some money?
Well, we've had the pound system, but Mr. Hanley, remember that this is an effort because the pound system obviously hasn't been working. We've had the pound system going back to colonial times.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is currently existing. It has not been working. So that is the problem. We're saying, well, how do you address this? Because you have a system which ought to address it, which hasn't been working. The pound system has failed. So what do you do?
But how did it fail? The farmers, when you unpound animals and the farmers don't collect them, then it's a government property.
Well, it's
then
not
you
just
sell
that.
the meat.
You have to impound animals. You have to go. You have to catch them. You have to transport them to the pound. You have to do all that. You ever try running cattle or running goat and sheep to try and catch them?
I'm sure
Who's going to be doing all that? And saying that is the
those young
problem.
men out there, they are very skilled.
Well, okay. Well, the system has not worked, and so we're trying to fix the system. We do not know if this is the perfect solution, but this is a solution that the technocrats came up with, that farmers understand that not just the government, but homeowners who have their properties violated have the right to call the police and ask the police to dispose of the animals.
But what happened, let's say you go out and you shoot 10 sheep. What do you do with that? Do you just bury them?
Well,
or
the
do you use
legislation
them?
has all that provision, Mr. Hanley. If you read the legislation, it provides for all of that, that the carcasses will go to the owner of the animals. If the owner of the animals doesn't show up, then the carcasses, I believe, will go to the Ministry of Agriculture, to the Department of Agriculture.
And they will use the meat.
Well, I assume whatever they will do with the meat, they will do with the meat. I don't know.
You can't, Mr. Premier, you said you don't know, but it's your legislation.
Well, I don't know what they will do with the meat, Mr. Hanley.
My thing is, if we're gonna use the meat, consume the meat. That's
But Mr.
that's
Hanley, the
better
legislation doesn't tell you what we'll do with the meat. It tells you who will own the carcass. So I don't know if the carcass will be sold, it will be given away, it will be consumed, it will be used for dog food. I can't answer that, what will be the meat will be used for. I'm simply saying that the carcass will go to the owner, who will then have the use of it for his or her purposes. And if the owner doesn't show up, then the government will be able to use the carcass.
Okay. Mr. Premier, you mentioned 403 four-season workers are laid off, or will be laid off.
That's the number, yes, that I have.
Yes. Are they going to claim severance? Are they eligible to claim a severance package from the federal government?
The layoff, as I understand it, is stated to be temporary. Under the laws, I understand it, they will be able to claim if they're temporarily laid off after 12 weeks. If it is that they treat the layoff as permanent, that is, they prefer to be made redundant, then they'll be able to claim severance pay immediately. So it will be a question of how the workers and the employers and the Labor Department chooses to treat these particular workers. Those at Marriott, for example, I'm told, were also laid off, but they've gone beyond 12 weeks. So they're now eligible to claim severance, because they can now treat themselves as being de facto, well, I don't want to use the word fired, but made redundant. Let me use that language.
Okay. Mr. Premier, you mentioned what is the supermarkets doing to to help with the economic crisis? Do you have anything that they know that they're doing to assist?
The supermarkets are doing?
The supermarkets.
I'm not aware that the supermarkets are doing anything.
Are they hiring more persons?
I can't speak to that, Mr.
Because
Hanley.
if the government is, you mentioned, what, $60-something thousand a month in food vouchers that the government is actually giving to the supermarket. That's extra money that they're getting. So I think that a part of that package should have been that they would hire more persons.
Well, the government is not giving any money to the supermarkets, so let me make that very clear. And I've been at pains to point out each time I've had this press conference that none of that food voucher program is coming from the Treasury. None of that. That is an initiative organized by the Concerned Citizens Movement as a party, and we who happen to be members of Cabinet contributed the initial $13,500 per month. Other private donors have contributed the balance. So that is why we've been able to benefit 162 persons in May, 300 in June, and we will see how many we can benefit in July. So the government isn't contributing to that program in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. But we all would agree that through this crisis, the supermarkets are making a lot of money, a lot of extra money. My point is, are they doing anything to assist?
I don't know. I have not had a conversation with the supermarkets about what they might be doing to assist. If they're making money, then that is good, because more money circulating in the economy is always good for the economy. And so I would hope that they continue to make money and that others continue to make money as well. That is why we have granted stimulus. The hope is that the local economy will start again to move.
All right, that's it for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanley.
Good morning. Monique Washington, St. Kitts Nevis Observer newspaper.
Good morning, Ms. Washington.
I'm going to start off with schools. In a normal school year, Public Works would have, around this time, begin work, remedial work at the schools. It's not a normal year. School has been closed from Easter. Has remedial work started? And if they have started, why start them so late, being that school was closed from Easter and it's going to be opening in September? With all the exemptions in taxes, how will the NIA Treasury stay afloat? And in what ways is the government planning on recouping the revenue lost? The Christina, now it's been 50 years that the Christina has sunk. Has your government or the federal government given any consideration to compensate the survivors of the Christina or even families of persons that would have perished on the Christina? The hospital. Now, previously you would have said that the government have put on hold all the capital projects, the hospital being one of the capital projects. Now, my question is, if the money for the project was already allocated to do the project, why would that project be put on hold? And also, can you tell us if you foresee at the end of this project that it will come in on budget or at budget? And coming off of Mr. Hanley speaking about the shooting of the animals, and licensed firearm holders are the persons that are basically allowed to do it, if needs be. Is there any fear, or does the government fear that humans might be harmed or killed during this process by stray bullets or by accident? And the last thing, can you give us an update on the NIA and Win-Ear situation? Thank you.
NIA and what?
Win-Ear.
Win-Ear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Washington. You talk about schools reopening, and then you talk about government having a lot of revenue leakage, loss right now, and how do we plan to recoup? And I smiled when you asked the two questions one after the other, because the two are connected. We can't do school renovations with ear. We have to do it with money. And so part of the question about why have we left things so late is connected to the second question that you asked, because our revenue is drastically reduced. And so our capacity to undertake certain repairs is affected and negatively impacted. We would have liked to have done more. The only major works that we did was at the Charleston Primary School during the COVID difficulty, the lockdown, so to speak, and we had asked for special permission to do that. The country was still under lockdown, as you know, still under curfew, and so we had to work within a very tightly constrained time parameters. But the short answer to your question is the money, the resources to do what we would normally do have not been readily available. And so we are starting now to do some minor remedial works at some of the schools. The budget that had been presented to the cabinet to do the usual was, I think, over $2 million. We did not have the capacity to do that this year. And so we have shrunk that to deal with things like the bathrooms and critical areas at the various schools that we are seeking to address. And so we're doing a number of small projects at the schools rather than the large projects replacing roofs and things like that that we've done in the past. So the two are connected in that sense, that we haven't had the revenue to think. In terms of recoup, how do we recoup revenue? Short answer is that the only way I think we can do it is to stimulate the economy. The more economic activity, the more consumption is the only way that we can, perhaps not recoup, but certainly recover as we go forward in terms of getting us back to earnings and revenue streams to which we have been accustomed. And that is why I've been pushing so hard to try to get the economy jump-started. That is why this weekend is so important, that we get as much consumption as we can. Being safe, of course, but at the same time generate as much consumption and as much activity as we can in the local economy, so that the people here can make, and if they make, the government collects its taxes as a result. So our plan, therefore, is one of economic expansion. That is what we're seeking to achieve in order to get us to a point where we can recover and the island can start to breathe again. Christina, you mentioned compensation. You asked, why has my government, I believe, or the federal government? The only thing I can say in relation to this issue of compensation is that the ferry was owned by the government of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla at the point. We did not yet have independence. We did not yet have a Nevis Island government at the time. And this was a ferry owned by the government that was situated on St. Kitts. If there's any liability, therefore, that liability would lie with that government, not with governments that would have been created post-independence, as the NIA has been. But it has been 50 years. And I believe now, if we're talking about compensation, if we're talking about doing something, then we perhaps might think of other things that we can do. And I suspect that we will hear more on that very shortly. We have a special sitting of the Assembly on Friday, that is tomorrow, and then we have the commemorative service on Saturday. So I'm certain that perhaps some greater clarity of what the NIA is prepared to do will come as we look at those statements that will be read during those two functions. The hospital, you say that that is one of the projects that has come to a halt, and you say money allocated. Why would that be on hold? I think that you must understand what the budgeting process is like. That funds that are allocated doesn't mean that the funds are sitting down in a drawer waiting for that project. So because we say that $20 million this year is allocated to the hospital, if things go wrong, as they've gone horribly wrong with COVID-19, we may not be able to meet that target because we are funding a lot of these projects from revenue. So even though they're capital projects, we're funding them from proceeds that the government gets. And so it's not just a question of whether money was allocated in terms of budgeted. It's also a question of have we been able to actually realize those monies in order to do the project. And that has been the problem that we've had this year. And that is why I said that we had to revisit, and some of these capital projects we've had to either put them on hold or slow down, because we have to fashion an ability to pay. Shooting of animals, you say about humans getting hurt. I would hope not. I would hope that those who are trained in the use of firearms, especially the police, would conduct themselves responsibly, and that would not be an issue. And so, whilst anything is possible, I hope that that kind of possibility would be remote, if it happens at all. That I don't expect people going to heavily populated human areas to fire at random. That if there are animals that need to be disposed of, then that will be done in a responsible way. And that is why we've talked about licensed firearm users, and we talked about the police, so that people don't take things into their own hands. The NIA Wynia situation, there's been no movement on that. Wynia has not given us any indication that they're willing to return at this point. We understand now that air traffic being what it is in the region, we must start to look afresh. But what we had been discussing at the time, if you recall, was whether there could be a replacement for Wynia to take us to St. Martin. All of that came to a crash in terms of discussions when COVID-19 intervened. And so as we talk about reopening now, we talk about reopening borders, I think that will be the time to have that conversation again to see where we go. But as of today, I don't have an update for you. There's been no movement on that discussion with Wynia.
Good morning. Okay, Hewlett here from the Department of Information. Okay, quickly, in terms of the early childhood development centers, now if there's going to be, they came out with a checklist, and there is going to be some physical distancing in terms of where the placements of the cribs and the number of children per square feet at these centers. So if there is, especially at the government-owned centers, if there are going to be less children per center, what then happens? Because also this is going to affect the private centers. They now probably will have to have less children. So where, the excess, where are these children going to go? And I think people already started getting calls in terms of the placement at the government preschools. And also in terms of the primary and high schools, how are the classrooms being outfitted to accommodate social distancing?
Thank you, Ms. Hewlett, and thank you for attending the press conference. What I would say is that we are well aware of the concern that you've raised. Certainly with the social distancing requirements now, the space that you had before you no longer have available to you. And so everybody has been affected. The technical people have come up with some numbers. What they're saying is that some of the facilities could actually hold the same number, differently configured. Some can actually hold a few more because they're not fully utilized. And then the majority, though, will have to hold less. And so we are even now looking for new space. In fact, I've had at least one informal conversation with Minister Liebert about a space that he thinks might work as a spillover space for early childhood center to take up some of the slack, so to speak. What I would say is that I am particularly concerned about the private sector early childhood centers, because while the government has the ability to perhaps maneuver in a particular way, they don't. And because they charge per child, per month as the case may be, if suddenly they're told that they had 30 children and they can only have 15, then certainly their revenue stream is cut significantly. Their ability to stay open is impacted. And so I propose to meet with them to see what we can do to assist those from the early childhood centers as well, and to see whether or not we may have any space available that we might be able to facilitate and assist them, because they are providing a critical service. But we recognize that the new requirements will generate some hardship for them. And it's not even a thing where you could do it in shifts, because people are working 8 to 4, and that is the time that they would want their children being taken care of. So, like the churches were able to do shifts, the early childhood centers, we can't do that. So it's a real concern, Ms. Hewlett, and so we will have to do the best we can, but I propose to meet with them to determine how and what assistance we might be able to provide to assist them in continuing to provide that critical service, even at the reduced levels that they're doing it. From the government point of view, however, the government side, we're looking at space that we might be able to do some of the spillover. In relation to the other schools, all the other schools, we are seeking to reconfigure in terms of spacing, principally in terms of spacing, but also in terms of the bathrooms, making available greater sanitization throughout the schools, etc. All of those things will be done and will continue to do. But I think that, as I've said publicly before, this government has been responsible. I believe that anybody who is fair, and even our harshest critics would say, that we have handled this pandemic in a responsible way. It is interesting that someone sent me a clip just yesterday of the Honorable Andrew Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica. And in response to a challenge by MP Lisa Hanna about masks and wearing masks, his response was that Jamaican government might have to consider making masks available to the population in Jamaica. And I smiled to myself because that's something Nevis did months ago. So it demonstrates that in many respects we are way ahead of the curve in terms of our thinking, in terms of our handling of the situation, and I'm happy to see that other countries are now looking and saying, well, okay, let us now adapt and adopt some of those same efforts that Nevis has been pioneering on. And so I'm very happy to hear Prime Minister Holness say that he's now looking at what we have done months ago to safeguard our people. He's now looking to implement that in Jamaica. So I think that we have been responsible. We will continue to be responsible. And that is why when we talk about good leadership and leadership matters, I think that that is what we have meant and we have demonstrated as such, and our people have been safe as a result. Any other questions?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
Jarvis Brown from Vaughan Radio. Just a few questions, Mr. Premier. You mentioned just a little while ago that 1,066 persons here at Nevis will have benefited from the COVID-19 Relief Fund.
Which
Yes.
relief fund are you talking about?
The
Social
Social
Security?
Security, yes.
1,666.
Or 1,000, okay.
Yes.
1666.
Yes.
Okay. In light of that, sir, are you in a position to say if whether there'll be some sort of continuation of that fund? Because we know that it would have been designated for 3 months, namely April, May, and June. So are you in a position to give a continuation of that, sir?
I am not
That's-
in that position. That will be a decision that will have to be taken at the federal level. I am aware that discussions have started, but I am not aware what will be done yet. Bear in mind that the anticipated uptake turned out to be higher than we thought it would be. And so I can't answer that question as yet.
The second question, sir, with regards to some weeks ago, the quarantine site breach there in St. James, could we have an update on that as well?
Quarantine site breach.
Yes, 2 individuals.
We have beefed up our security. We continue to speak to those who are quarantined that they must conduct themselves responsibly. That's a word I've used a lot during this press conference, that they're in quarantine for their own protection and for the protection of others. And so that has been our response, which really is to beef up security and beef up our public education, beef up our interaction with those to be quarantined so that they know what the expectations are. If those individuals, any police action or prosecution will occur, that will be a matter for the police authorities.
And the final question, sir. We know COVID-19 would have basically postponed or even cancelled a lot of activity and events, not just in Nevis, but throughout the world.
Yes.
But in light of that, sir, with regards to certain construction, like at the University Heights or at Hamilton Estate, could you give a time frame as to when these projects will continue this year or
Oh, yes,
perhaps next
definitely.
year?
Definitely. Those projects are intended to move forward. I believe that University Heights is, in fact, in a state of readiness to move forward. Part of it may not just be us, because remember the structure of those projects is that individuals buying in have to go to the bank and get their loans sorted, etc. So sometimes we're waiting on individuals to get sorted. So even if we may write to you and tell you that you've been approved for a home at the project, you then have to go through your process with your banker, because remember that the approach in Nevis is different to that in St. Kitts. In Nevis, we ask our homeowners, our home buyers, to go to the bank, get the financing, and then we build a home. We don't stockpile homes. The government doesn't have the ability to build 300 homes and then hand them out. So that is why projects in Nevis take perhaps maybe a little longer and are done differently. And so the idea is that the Nevis Housing Land Development Corporation doesn't have the capacity to carry millions and millions of dollars worth of housing stock while it seeks buyers. So we are building it for you as you get your financing, and that sometimes leads to a bit of a delay. So you'd realize on most of those projects what we do, because what we're responsible for is infrastructure. So we go ahead and we put that in, but the actual construction may sometimes be a little delayed. We have, however, continued a pace. If you go now over to Madden's and the development over there, that is really blossoming very nicely. That is continuing. And we would hope that those 2 projects that you've talked about, that we'll be able to get them settled very quickly.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're most welcome. Are there any other questions for me?
I have 3 final questions. Just to piggyback on what my colleague Ms. Hewlett said from the Ministry of Information. In regards to the opening of schools in September, I took note that the Minister of Education in Nevis, the Honorable Troy Liburd, he said that schools will be open in September. However, we have yet to hear a plan for that, considering that you will have hundreds, if not thousands, of students descending into schools, and then you will have to ensure that they are all social distancing and the areas are sanitized every day. So will the government hire more persons to ensure that that happens, or will that be the responsibility of the teachers?
Well, of course, we would expect to hire or retrain. One of the situations now is that the cleaners that we have at our schools are largely part-time. A lot of them just come for an hour in the afternoon or 2 hours in the afternoon. So we are currently already seeking full-time persons, because recall now the way things have changed, we're going to have cleaners available all during the day. So there's a continuous cleaning, continuous sanitization, bathrooms, public areas, etc. So that has already started, that process of seeking to identify persons who are able. So what we're going to do are that those who currently are doing cleaning at our schools, clearly they will be our first choice. Right? If some of them cannot do that, don't want to do that, then we'll have to make available those options for other people who might want a job as a full-time cleaner. The idea of part-time now has to go out the window, because we're going to need people there all day, every day, doing the necessary sanitization as we go. So that's part and parcel of the preparation that we've already started. The other, as in response to Ms. Hewlett, is that we're going to have to do some physical adjustments at some of the schools, and we will have to better prepare our bathroom facilities, our sanitization facilities. I think you're going to see sanitization stations being positioned out throughout our schools, throughout our public buildings. That is part and parcel of what we will also be doing. So you'll hear more as we go. But yes, all indications are that schools should open as scheduled in September, early September.
What about who will ensure the social distancing? Because, you know, teenagers.
Well, that will be a matter. That will be a matter for the discipline at the school, the security guards, the principal, the teachers. I think all of that, they will have to work collaboratively to seek to ensure that we do the best we can in the circumstances.
Okay. Just to piggyback as well on what my colleague Monique said about compensation for the over 300 souls who perished on Christina. I took note that Christina sank in 1970. Yes. My history tells me that Nevis was a colony of England, Britain, in 1970. So compensation can be made by the British government. So have the government made an application to the British government in regards to their negligence during that time?
You assume a lot of things, that the British government was negligent. For example, I don't know. I don't know who was responsible, whether it was the British government. St. Kitts and Nevis had a local government in place. I believe that we were, if memory serves, an associated state with certain self-governing responsibilities. We were headed at the time, I believe, was by our first national hero, Right Excellent Llewellyn Bradshaw. And he had a government, and that government owned the ferry, Christina. So whether that now means that the UK government had some responsibility, I can't answer that.
Well, an application,
in terms of an application, I'm not aware that any application was made to the UK government. I don't know that anybody has ever held the UK government responsible for this tragedy. And so the answer is no, I am not aware of any application having been made.
Well, that is something we can look into, because I could tell you they take that very serious in England, because I remember when I was there studying for 4 years. I was attacked while working part-time by 5 men, and I took the government, I made a claim, and I was able to collect £5,000 in compensation for some head injuries and face injuries that were caused. So my thing is, if an application is made in regards to Christina, I'm sure they would look at it, and we have nothing to lose.
Well, I hear you, and that is something I suppose that we
need the money now, right?
We can look at. Well, it wouldn't be us getting any money. And if any money came, it would go, I assume,
to the families. 300, and that is a good economic stimulus there. We could do with some of that money now for compensation in regards to the over 300 souls who perished. Mr. Premier, I listened a little bit of your show last night in regards to you and Ras Elroy was talking about Africa. And I must say it was a very, I agree with most of the things you said.
You tend to. You tend to. That is not unusual, Mr. Hanley. You tend to.
Yes, it was a nice show.
Good.
You spoke about there's places in Africa where it's well developed, but the issue is the imagery here. For example, I was living in England for 4 years, and I have had many African friends there. And would you believe I was the poorest one between there? Those guys were spending a lot of money. They had a lot of money. And I actually told them that about the desert, you know, images that we see on TV down here, about sick children and the desert and stuff like that. And they laugh because a lot of them they said they've never been to those places. To get to some of those places that they show us on TV, the wars and the desert and sick children, they say they have to fly about 5 hours from where they live to get there, so they've never been to those areas. So Africa is a rich country, but the issue is that what we see on television is negative imagery. What is the government doing to improve that? For example, I don't know if we could get some African channels and stuff like that, because that goes a long way in improving the image of Africa among citizens, because many of them, they think like Africa is just desert and sick children and stuff like that. So what is the government doing to improve that? And you also mentioned, one of the things you mentioned is you mentioned something about a direct flight from Nigeria to St. Kitts and Nevis, that you're working on it. Can you give us a little details on that? Because I believe that would be a fantastic idea, a direct flight from Nigeria to St. Kitts and Nevis, because Nigeria is the largest black nation in the world, and lots of, they are oil rich, and there are many wealthy persons in Nigeria. So if we have that direct flight, that would be fantastic. So can you give us a little details about that? And that's it for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. Thank you for your suggestion about the UK government. Something that certainly is worthwhile looking at. The Africa and the discussion about Africa was part of the discussion about reparations. I think that is why Ras Iroy came to the radio program last night. And we have a reparations committee now that has been reinstituted in St. Kitts and Nevis, headed by a lady called Carla Astafan. I believe that Mr. Ras Iroy is the vice chair of that particular committee. And part of that reparatory justice, as they call it, is the whole issue of repatriation, that persons like yourself, if you so desire, can decide you're going to go to Africa and leave the Caribbean and go to Africa. And so they're having that discussion, and I thought that the discussion last night was enlightening, it was engaging, and the idea behind it was to do some of what you're describing, to give a different perspective and to change the narrative. That all of us, the media, of course, you're the ones who are principally shapers of public opinion, that you have that responsibility. You make a very good suggestion about African channels on cable. That is something that certainly is worthwhile looking at to see if that would help. The direct flight from Nigeria, nothing came of that initiative. This was something that had been proposed by our honorary consul in Nigeria, but that sort of fell apart, particularly as COVID intervened. Whether or not there's any appetite post-COVID for it, we'll have to explore. The reason I raised the point last night because someone was commenting that they had taken them 3 days to get to Africa. And I was surprised that when we had these discussions, they were saying that it was only 10.5 hours from Nigeria direct to St. Kitts and Nevis. That surprised me because 10.5 hours is nearly the same distance to the UK, for example. So we, again, mentally have this image that Africa is so far away from us. But here was a suggestion that you could get to Africa in the space of time, roughly give or take 2 hours, that you would take to go to the UK. So that really was the context in which I raised this. But that particular initiative had sort of withered away because the interest had waned and COVID intervened. And so we have not restarted that. I should tell you that the quest to have air transport, air links with Africa continues to be something the Caribbean has been seeking. And I believe that that was one of the issues that would have been raised when President Uhuru Kenyatta from Kenya would have had a summit with CARICOM in Barbados just last year, I believe it was. Since then, what we have done is we have engaged. In fact, St. Kitts Nevis now, for the very first time in our history, has an ambassador accredited to Kenya, Ambassador Verna Mills, who's based in Cuba, but she went to Kenya and would have presented her credentials there. And we have been trying to stimulate our engagement with Africa. We feel that if we can do so diplomatically, then the rest follows. So you start to follow in terms of assistance, exchanges, cultural and otherwise, airlift, economy, trade. These are the areas that we would like to look at. As you know, in Morocco now we have a national of St. Kitts and Nevis, His Excellency Ian Quealy, who is the ambassador in Morocco, although that is an OECS embassy. We still think it's an important position. Morocco is a leader in North Africa. And so we have we're in the nascent stages, the early stages of a developing relationship with Africa. I have said publicly and to my colleagues in the cabinet that we need to do more. I would like to see us, for example, open an office in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia so that we can have a closer nexus with the African Union that is based in Ethiopia. That will give CARICOM and us, by extension, access to some 54 African countries. If you combine the 54 African countries with the 13 or thereabouts CARICOM countries, you realize what kind of voting bloc you're now talking about in places like the UN and elsewhere. So all of these are important initiatives that I think we should continue. Airlift is going to be critical. But I also want our people, and I know the press is tired of hearing me talking about it, but for example, we had 20 scholarships at one point offered from Morocco in Africa, and I shouldn't say many, nobody took advantage of that. So we have gone out and we have tried, but part of it is our people as well, educating themselves. And there's no excuse now in my view, because with the internet you can find anything. So if you want to find out what Morocco is like and what university in Morocco looks like, you can go and research. So part of it is us educating ourselves so that when the opportunities do arise, that we can take advantage of those opportunities rather than saying that we don't want to go there, it's too far, or we don't understand that culture, so we don't want that. I mentioned last night that I have a cousin who works with the IMF in Ghana, and he was indicating to me that he found so much of what happens in Ghana to be identical to what happens in St. Kitts Nevis. Food, the market, the way people cook, what they eat. He said he felt like he was home when he went there. So culturally, we're not much different. A lot of what we do here, and not even so much aware of why we do it, is really coming from Africa. These are traditions that our forefathers brought with them and that have been inculcated in us. So we're not too far apart, Mr. Hanley. And I believe personally very strongly that the future lies with Africa, and that is where we must position ourselves, to pivot away from North America and Canada and UK and Europe, and to pivot towards Africa, because I think what we call South-South cooperation has now to be given greater meaning. So you won't get an argument from me there. I'm committed to that task. Are there any other questions for me? No? Thank you very much, members of the media. Thank you to all those who covered. Thank you to NTV. I'm grateful. Thank you, Mr. Permanent Secretary. And thank you for all for observing the necessary protocols. And I look forward to seeing you next month at another press conference. Thank you. God bless you.